guys, so the first stop in the Graceland Cemetery is the Eternal Silence sculpture, also known as the Dexter Graves Monument or the Statue of Death. Now it gets the nickname Statue of Death. It says if you look into its eyes, you'll get like a brief flash of how you're gonna die in the last moments. So I don't know if it'll work on film. We could take a quick look and see. I don't know if anyone's seen any flashbacks of their last moments, but that is one of the myths surrounding this statue. The other myth being it's unable to be photographed. So it's recording fine now, but we'll have to take a look later and see, did it actually record? So interestingly enough, the statue is actually made of bronze. It's just heavily oxidized from not being polished. So that's why it has that green look to it. And the cemetery actually used to polish it, but people didn't like it, so they requested they stop polishing it because they like looking at the green hooded figure. They say it's supposed to be like a figure of a monk, and you can see people left some gifts for the statue. There's some coins here, some flowers. Someone even made a bracelet. But yeah, it's very striking. The green against the black granite background that he's standing against. We'll take a look around the back too, just so you can get a quick look of this statue. Oh yeah, and there's a little plaque here. I'll read it for you in case you can't see it. It says it is erected by Henry Graves, son of Dexter Graves, one of the pioneers of Chicago. Dexter Graves brought the first colony to Chicago, consisting of 13 families arriving here, July 15, 1831, from Ashtabula, Ohio, on the schooner Telegraph, and father and son remained citizens of Chicago till their death. And then there's some more information there that you can hopefully read if you pause the screen. But yeah, so this is actually his grave. He died way before this was built, but his grave was later relocated and his family had this built in his honor. But yeah, a lot of people describe the statue as creepy. I think it's very cool looking. But yeah, I can definitely see how some people would find it eerie or even scary. So that's the first stop. We'll take a look and see what's next. Alright, the next stop on our tour of Graceland is the Inez Clarke statue and grave. Now it is said this was a little girl in the late 1800s who was on a picnic with her family, and there was a lightning storm. She got struck by lightning and was unfortunately killed. So her family had this life-size monument built of her and put up in the cemetery at her gravesite. So you can see it's in very good shape because they actually built a glass box around it. So I guess they wanted to make sure it was kept safe and in pristine condition so people can look at it for eternity. And you can see it is in amazing shape for how old it is. If this has been here since the 1800s, you can see the bottom is all green and oxidized, but the inside is in great shape. You can't even really read what is left on there. You can read the Clark part, but not the Inez, but it does say Inez there at the bottom. I don't know if you're able to see that. It's got the inscription. I think it says Gagel 1881. You can see some people left some gifts behind. And then those were her parents, John H. Clark and then Mary C. Clark. So the whole family here is buried together. And one interesting kind of fact about this place and how it's haunted, they say when it storms, especially at night, if there's lightning, you come and check out this grave, the glass box will be empty because Inez is hiding because she's scared of the storms. She doesn't want to get struck by lightning again. So that story started from an old night watchman who was, patrolling the cemetery at night. keeping an eye. And he said one night when he was out here and it was storming, there was lightning, he could not see any statue in the box. It was just an empty glass box. No Inez statue inside. We are here at the Palmer Mausoleum. This is where two wealthy Chicagoans, Potter Palmer and his wife Bertha Palmer, were laid to rest and buried, and they had this huge mausoleum built over the graves to kind of protect them and, you know, show off their status as a wealthy Chicagoan. So they were initially known for running a successful dry goods store, and then later sold it to Marshall Fields, and then the Palmer family heavily invested in State Street, downtown Chicago, which is a huge shopping district, and they owned about a mile of it. And they also built the Palmer House Hotel, which operates today as the Palmer House Hilton, so it's actually still in existence. And you can see these are the actual graves containing, you know, their remains. That's Potter Palmer and his wife Bertha Honore Palmer, and you can see it has one of the best views in the cemetery because it's built right on the cemetery's lake. So as you can see, they have a beautiful final resting place. Now, the strange thing about this mausoleum, people have reported it being extremely quiet in here, which it does seem a little quiet, but I have a feeling it's probably due to being a little bit enclosed and near quieter end of the cemetery. But people have also reported like a creepy, eerie feeling. And I guess this place was creepy enough that they used it in the sequel to Omen, the Damien movie. This was also featured in. And you can see besides those two graves, other family members are buried surrounding them. So you got Potter Palmer, probably like a son, and maybe his wife Pauline Palmer. That's Potter Palmer III, Gordon Palmer, and yeah, just various family members surrounding them so they can all be together forever. Here we are at the Ludwig Wolf grave. Now, Mr. Ludwig Wolf was a coppersmith who went on to start his own plumbing and fixture company here in the city of Chicago and was very successful, as you can see by his grave. Now, unfortunately, he did have some bad luck in his life. Two of his children died in the Iroquois Theater fire, so I think he had some kind of weird, kind of like obsession with possibly dying or not being able to breathe. So if you notice at the top of his gravesite, he had ventilation put in. He didn't want to be buried below ground. He didn't want to suffocate, so he had that little vent at the top of his grave built, so in case he was buried alive or whatever the case was, he was in there, he'd still be able to breathe. And it's said this gravesite, if you notice, there's apartment buildings, there's like a main street that runs right on the other side of this grave here. People in these apartment buildings behind here have reported seeing a dog or a wolf or a coyote or something keeping an eye on his grave at night. So I guess he had a trusted companion or something with him when he was living, and it's still watching over him today. Here we are at the gravesite of Daniel Burnham. Now, he's got one of the most strangest graves in the fact that his is actually on a private island. You can see the only lake in the cemetery and the only island belongs to him and his family. And he's notable as a famous architect, especially in the city of Chicago. He's responsible for like a big portion of how the city of Chicago looks today, as far as the streets being laid out, parks being put aside for public use, And then he was also responsible for the world's exposition. So you can see one of his family members, another family member, and then that is his son, Daniel Hudson Burnham Jr., and his wife, Martha Simpson Burnham. And then you can see, here's his main grave, and he died in April, or I believe June 1912, something like that, between April and June 1912. Daniel Hudson Burnham and his wife Margaret, and then another family member right here. And you can see also just one of the best views in the entire cemetery, because it's right on the lake here. So he's got 360-degree views, and they say he haunts this island and his workplace downtown, the Rookery building. So it's said you can see on the banks of this island sometimes a man just standing there with his hands in his pockets, just, I guess, admiring the view.